Imagine reaching into your pocket for spare change, and without a second thought, you toss a humble penny into the jar by the door. Now, imagine that same penny could be the key to a hidden treasure, worth thousands, maybe tens of thousands of dollars. That's not fantasy. That's the reality behind one of the most iconic and often overlooked coins in American numismatic history, the 1957 Lincoln wheat penny. On its surface, it looks just like any other. A copper coin with the familiar face of President Abraham Lincoln, facing right, the word Liberty over his left shoulder, and the date, 1957, pressed confidently into its lower right. Flip it over, and you'll find two wheat stalks arching along the edges, enclosing the words, 1 cent, and United States of America. Below, the simple Latin motto, E pluribus unum, out of many, one. Millions of these coins were minted. In fact, the Philadelphia Mint alone struck over 282 million of them, and Denver followed with more than 1 billion coins bearing the D Mint mark. They were everywhere. In lunch money, parking meters, vending machines. And yet, today, some of these exact coins have become the prized possessions of collectors, and not for their face value, but for what lies beneath their ordinary appearance. The journey of the 1957 wheat penny begins in a time when the United States was still echoing from the post-war boom. America was building homes, families, and highways. It was a time of optimism. And yet, at the U.S. Mint, a quiet drama played out, an unpredictable dance of machines, metal, and human error. What transforms this coin from common to extraordinary is not only its place in history but the unusual minting mistakes that turned everyday pocket change into numismatic legends. Some 1957 pennies were struck with repunched mint marks, where the D was accidentally punched into the die more than once, slightly off register. Under magnification, collectors could see a faint shadow, a second D overlapping the first. These RPM coins, short for repunched mint mark, became one of the most sought-after varieties, especially in mint condition. Then there were the doubled dies. Subtle at first glance, these errors manifest in doubled inscriptions or slightly misaligned details, like an eerie shadow echoing the original text. On a genuine doubled die 1957 penny, the word Liberty, or the motto, In God We Trust, might appear with a slight doubling that's hard to see without magnification, but to a seasoned collector, it's like striking gold. Other errors include off-center strikes, where the coin blank was misaligned when stamped, leaving Lincoln's profile sliding off to one side. The more dramatic the misalignment, while still keeping the date and mint mark visible, the more valuable the coin becomes. Then there are die cracks, fine lines that occur when the die used to strike the coin begins to fracture. These cracks can leave raised lines across Lincoln's face or neck, turning what was supposed to be a pristine image into something entirely unique. One famous variety features a die crack that almost looks like a lightning bolt streaking across Lincoln's bust. Odd? Yes. Valuable? Extremely, and let's not forget the elusive BAE error. Between the letters B and E in the word Liberty, a small vertical die break sometimes forms, creating what appears to be the capital letter I. This tiny flaw, barely noticeable without a loop, creates what collectors lovingly call the BIE variety. Some BAE errors from 1957 have gone on to become cherished additions in high-grade coin collections, not because they're perfect, but precisely because they aren't. Each of these imperfections tells a story. A story of a coin that wasn't meant to stand out, but now does. A story of human craftsmanship intersecting with mechanical unpredictability. A story of something meant to be mundane, transformed by chance into a hidden gem. But the real magic happens when these flawed, rare, or high-grade coins reach the auction block. That's where dreams can come true. In 2022, a 1957 D wheat penny with a sharply struck die and stunning red coloration graded MS67 Plus by PCGS fetched $4,465 at auction. Not bad for something originally worth just 1 cent. Another example? A spectacularly preserved 1957 Philadelphia minted penny, graded MS67 red and nearly flawless, sold for $2,880 in a Heritage Auctions event. It wasn't even an error coin, just sheer quality and rarity of condition drove its value through the roof. But if you add in dramatic errors, things get even more exciting. A 1957 D penny with an off-center strike, showcasing nearly 30% of the planchet blank, still bearing the full date and mint mark, went under the hammer for $3,150. Why? Because off-center coins like this, especially with visible dates, are incredibly rare and command top dollar, and then there's the RPMs. One 1957 D repunched mint mark variety in mint state condition, graded MS66 red, caught the attention of a serious collector and was sold for $1,125. Small error. Big impact, even a BIE variety coin, unassuming yet charming, sold for $690 in VF35 condition, purely due to the fascination surrounding these quirky die breaks that it's easy to dismiss pennies. They're everywhere. They're forgotten at the bottoms of purses and lost in car cup holders. But among them could lie a piece of history, a rare error, or a pristine survivor of the minting process that somehow defied the odds. That's the thrill of the hunt. That's why collectors obsess over wheat pennies. Because they embody everything that makes numismatics magical: history, rarity, beauty, and yes, surprising value. So next time you're sorting through change or spot a dusty jar full of old coins in your grandparents' attic, don't overlook the humble 1957 Lincoln penny. Check the mint mark. Look for oddities. Hold it to the light. Maybe, just maybe, you're holding on to a small fortune and don't even know it. Here are the most notable auction prices recorded for the 1957 Lincoln wheat penny. 1957 DMS 67 plus red, $4 for 651,957, Philadelphia. MS 67 red, $2 8801957, D off center strike, 30%, 58 Australian dollars, $3 1501957, D RPM variety. In a world where billions of coins pass unnoticed through our fingertips every single day, there exists a humble cent that has defied the odds. It doesn't glitter like gold or shimmer like silver. In fact, it may have already traveled unnoticed in your pocket, resting among everyday change. But for the trained eye and the lucky collector, the 1950 D Lincoln wheat penny is no ordinary coin. It's a tiny copper witness to a bygone era, a tangible fragment of American history, and in rare cases, a highly valuable treasure hiding in plain sight. The year was 1950. America was bracing for the Cold War, veterans of World War II were settling into civilian life, and the economy was picking up steam. Amid this historical backdrop, the Denver Mint quietly struck over 334 million Lincoln cents. At first glance, there was nothing particularly special about the 1950 D penny. It bore the same classic profile of President Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, with the words, "In God We Trust," arched above, "Liberty," on the left, and the year, 1950, to the right, accompanied by the small but significant D mint mark below. Turn the coin over, and there it was again, the wheat stalks flanking the words, 1 cent, and United States of America, a reverse design lovingly referred to as the wheat ear reverse. Simple. Patriotic. Enduring. Designed by Victor David Brenner back in 1909, the Lincoln cent had already become a beloved staple in American pockets, but somewhere in the flurry of mass production, the machines faltered. And where machines falter, opportunity often arises in the world of numismatics. You see, not all 1950 D Lincoln pennies are created equal. Some harbor secrets, errors, anomalies, imperfections. And these peculiarities are exactly what make certain examples so desirable, and in some cases, staggeringly valuable. One of the most talked about varieties from this year is the repunched mint mark, or RPM. These are coins where the D mint mark was punched into the die more than once, creating a subtle but unmistakable doubling effect. Some show the secondary D slightly above or to the left of the primary one. To the casual observer, it might look like a smudge. But to a collector with a loupe and a sharp eye, it's a sign of treasure. And then, there are off-center strikes. Imagine a coin where Lincoln's head is partially missing, shifted toward the edge as if the entire design was nudged just before creation. In rare cases, these off-center coins retain full dates and mint marks, making them particularly valuable. One such example recently stunned at auction, fetching nearly $2,000. Die cracks, cut breaks, and lamination errors are also found in a few lucky 1950 D cents. These errors, caused by aging or damaged dies, leave scars across the coin's surface, often looking like raised veins or jagged lines. While some might dismiss these marks as flaws, collectors prize them as fingerprints of the minting process itself, a living record of how the coin was born. but even perfectly struck coins can command attention when preserved in immaculate condition. Most coins from circulation have suffered decades of wear. Their edges are worn smooth, and Lincoln's details have faded like memories. That's why finding a 1950 D penny in brilliant uncirculated, full red condition is like discovering a photograph from the past that hasn't aged a day. Collectors grade coins on a 70-point scale, and a 1950 D penny graded MS67 red, that is, mint state with full red copper luster, is exceptionally rare. Only a handful have survived in such pristine condition. One of these radiant gems brought in a remarkable $9,400 at a heritage auction. Another, just slightly lower in grade at MS66+, reached $3,600. It's not just a coin at that point, it's a survivor, a pristine ambassador of its era. There's also the human element to this story. Take, for instance, the tale of a retiree in Kansas who had been collecting wheat pennies casually since childhood. One rainy afternoon, while going through an old coffee tin, he discovered a reddish-brown penny with an odd-looking mint mark. Curious, he mailed it to a grading company. Weeks later, he was informed it was a rare RPM variety in MS65 red condition. The coin later sold for $4,250. What started as a childhood habit became an unexpected windfall. These coins remind us that stories and value aren't always where we expect them. A 1950 D Lincoln cent could be waiting in a coin jar, forgotten in a drawer, or resting in a collection passed down through generations. To most people, it's just a penny. To the world of numismatics, it might be a jackpot. Every scratch tells a story. Every misalignment or doubling is a fingerprint of history. Each coin is a frozen moment, and in rare instances, they are elevated from the mundane to the magnificent. So before you toss that penny aside or let it vanish into a vending machine, take a closer look. Because one of them might just have a quirk, a whisper of a flaw, that turns it into something extraordinary. And in the hands of the right collector, that whisper becomes a roar. Here are the most notable auction prices for the 1950 D Lincoln wheat penny, 1950 D Lincoln cent MS67 red, no errors, sold $4.9400150. D RPM number 1 MS65 red, sold $4.4, off. Center strike with visible date / mint mark, sold $4.1985. Die crack error, 55 Australian dollars. Sold $4.640. Lamination error in XF40 condition, sold $4.310. MS66 red standard strike, sold for $3,600. Let me take you back to a time when the world was at war, when the world's fate teetered on a knife's edge, and when every ounce of metal mattered. In the midst of all this, the humble 1942 Lincoln wheat penny was quietly born at U.S. mints. To the average person, this coin might seem like just another small copper piece among millions, a relic of a time long gone. But what if I told you that within its worn edges and simple design lies a story of scarcity, error, and value that has electrified collectors for decades? Struck at the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints, the 1942 Lincoln wheat penny was part of an era when materials were so precious that even the composition of coins was debated and adjusted to meet wartime demands. Though primarily minted in bronze, which is 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc, subtle anomalies began to surface. It wasn't just the composition that fascinated collectors. It was the errors, the beautifully bizarre slip-ups that turned common coins into numismatic legends. Collectors started noticing peculiarities. The first whispers came from sharp-eyed enthusiasts who spotted slight doubling in the inscriptions on some Philadelphia minted coins. Closer inspection under magnification confirmed it, a doubled die obverse. Look closely, and you'll see the ghostly shadows behind the letters, Liberty, the date, 1942, and even the iconic phrase, "In God We Trust." To the casual observer, they might appear as faint blurs, but to those in the know, they're a clear signal of a printing anomaly that can catapult a penny's value from cents to thousands of dollars. Then there were the off-center strikes. Imagine a coin where Lincoln's solemn face is nudged slightly off its usual position, a result of a misaligned die. Some of these errors were dramatic, with the image pushed so far off-center that entire parts of the coin went missing. Yet the most valuable among them still retained their date and mint mark. These coins, imperfect by mint standards, became perfect collectibles. each a one-of-a-kind accident that no machine could replicate twice. A rare few 1942 pennies even bore evidence of being struck on the wrong planchet. These are particularly tantalizing finds. A coin meant to be copper suddenly minted on a silver dime planchet, for instance, can fetch tens of thousands of dollars at auction. The moment such an error is confirmed, it's like discovering a hidden treasure in plain sight. Lightweight, slightly off-color, and slightly undersized, these oddities defied standard production rules, and became the stuff of collector dreams. Even more intriguing were the coins that bore signs of die cracks and cuts. These deformities appeared as raised lines or blobs where the die began to fail or break. While often ignored by casual collectors, specialists view them as footprints of the minting process itself, tiny scars that tell a larger story of machines under stress, of deadlines being pushed, and of tools pushed beyond their limit. Among the most thrilling stories in numismatics is the time a roll of 1942 Lincoln wheat pennies was purchased for face value at a flea market. The collector, a lifelong enthusiast, was scanning the coins one by one under his loupe when he noticed an unusual weight. The color was slightly off, and the sound of the coin when dropped against a metal surface had a distinct ring to it. After professional authentication, it was confirmed to be a 1942 Lincoln penny struck on a dime planchet. The final auction price? A jaw-dropping $34,650. And there's emotional value, too. One collector discovered a rare double-die 1942 wheat penny in a jar left behind by his grandfather, a man who had fought in the very war that reshaped the world. That coin, authenticated and graded as MS-66 red, was later sold for $18,900. Yet, for the family, the real treasure was the connection it gave them to a man whose memory was now preserved not just in stories, but in a sliver of copper. The 1942 Lincoln wheat penny reminds us that rarity isn't always about grand, glaring differences. Sometimes, it's the tiny flaws, the minute errors, the things others overlook that become priceless. This penny is a perfect example. Minted in the millions, yet hiding within that mass are a few unique specimens whose stories continue to echo through coin shows, collectors' forums, and auction houses. If you're holding on to a 1942 Lincoln penny, take a second look. You might see nothing special. Or you might spot a misplaced date, a doubling in the text, an odd weight or sound. That coin in your hand could be a treasure waiting to be discovered, its value concealed beneath years of dust and handling. Here are the most notable auction prices achieved by the 1942 Lincoln 1-cent wheat penny error coins. 1942 double die obverse, MS-66 red, sold $4.18, 9001942 off-center strike with visible date, MS-64 brown, sold $4.2, 7501942 struck on dime planchet, 58 Australian dollars, sold $4.34, 6501942 Lincoln penny with die crack, MS-63 red/brown, sold $4.1, 1501942 San Francisco mint full red. MS-67 plus, sold $4.7, 8001942 Denver mint misaligned die error, MS-65 red, sold $4.3, 200. So remember, next time you sift through a jar of coins or get change from a vending machine, that little copper penny could be your next big discovery. Because in the world of numismatics, what looks ordinary could be anything but.